Thank you for joining us today, Therapy Chat with Phoenix Behavioral Health. I'm Dr. Dawn Parks, and with me is Christine Delorier, LICSW and addiction specialist. And last week we talked about the effects of exercise on mental health, and today we're going to talk about the effects of nutrition on mental health, because both of these factors can have a very big impact on our mental health well-being. And you know, Western dietary habits have a reputation for using a lot of highly processed food, not so much fish and fresh produce, and a lot of refined grains and sodas, sweet drinks, lots of sugar, which can increase the risk of depression, and also along with what we talked about last session, less exercise as well. It's not a good situation to be in. So today we're going to look about some of the what are thought of as the most nutritious foods. So if we could, in a while we'll look at the list, and if we could start to integrate some of those, or a lot of those foods into our regular diet, and take in some of those and perhaps let go of some of the more highly processed foods or refined foods, that can be a good step to move forward. Because there is a link with food and mood. And when we don't eat well, when our nutrition is not good, that can result in clouded, foggy thinking, mental fatigue, difficulty focusing, paying attention, right? And the more stress that we have in our life, the more nutrients are depleted. So that's something that's really important to think about. And we have a graphic that is up now that talks about stress and nutrient depletion. One of those, magnesium, it's involved in over 300 chemical reactions in the body, and it does play a big role when there's lack of magnesium in issues with depression and increased stress. So if you're already under or going through a stressful time in your life, those nutrients are already going to be depleted more quickly. So something to look at, what's my intake? What's my magnesium intake? What's my intake of all these other nutrients that we're going to be talking about? B vitamins, they play a big role in producing certain neurotransmitters in the brain that help with mood and stress management. They're also really important to as far as helping the nervous system function at its best, right? But they are water soluble, which means that we can only store so much that there's not like a good storage system in the body, so we have to make sure that we're taking them in more regularly. Iron, its primary role is to transport oxygen in the red blood cells. So when we don't have enough iron, we can run into issues such as fatigue, physical but mental fatigue too, shortness of breath, and women, children and vegetarians are most at risk for iron depletion caused by stress, because when we're under stress, those reserves get depleted fairly quickly. Vitamin C, big one. I think a lot of people, we often hear about how important vitamin C is. It's an antioxidant which affects and protects the body from free radicals and what's called oxidative stress. So if we are going through a lot of stress, and the stress hormones, cortisol, we talked about that a few sessions back, when there's high levels of cortisol, that uses up our vitamin C. So we want to make sure that we're taking in enough vitamin C. D, known as the sunshine vitamin. A lot of foods are not that high in vitamin D. There are a few, but during a lot of stress, again, those reserves are used up. And so that is going to affect our whole system. And zinc. This is very much linked to our immune system and our mood. So low levels of zinc have been linked to issues with depression, increased risk for depression and inflammation. So how do we eat for stress management, which is our graphic number 2, right? So we want to focus on foods that are high in these nutrients, right? That are high in certain vitamins. So on the list you can see here, we want to incorporate into our daily diet leafy green vegetables, because they're high in iron and they're high in magnesium. Whole grains, again high in magnesium, high in B vitamins. Nuts, which are high in magnesium, vitamin C. Certain times we can, when we put certain foods with other foods, we get the most out of that nutrient. And this is one case. If we need to absorb iron, if we're low on iron, if we eat something that's rich in iron and we also have vitamin C, like a glass of orange juice or an orange, that improves the absorption of the iron as well. Dark chocolate, but it has to be dark. And when we say dark chocolate, that means at least 70%, and no caramel or fruit filling in the middle. Just plain chocolate, which is high in iron, high in magnesium, and a lot of other good nutrients too. A lean red meat for magnesium, B vitamins and iron, and being out in the sunlight is really important. And it doesn't mean sunbathing. It just means being out in the sun. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time, 20 minutes or so. So a well-balanced diet, right? Yes, it's not going to change the fact that there are stresses happening, right? But it can help us stay healthier and more focused and more able to cope with the stresses that are happening. And when we did our session on stress management, and we talked about, identifying stresses, and the issue that when we're in a stressful environment, a lot of the things that are happening, we have no control over. It's either other people, other events, other situations, right? So we need to have some type of empowerment, something that we can do for ourselves. So especially in a time when there's a lot of stuff going on over which we have no control, we can say, well, what does my diet look like? What does my exercise look like? And those are two really big things that can help us and help in our mental health and well-being. And also alcohol can have an effect. And Christine, what do you feel about that?
I talk a lot about healthy eating with the clients that I see in the substance abuse field. In early recovery, what I tend to see happen is people are skipping meals, or they're eating the wrong meals, and they're also eating the wrong meals at the wrong time. There are certain foods that we call alertness foods or wake-up foods, and foods that are relaxation foods. And what tends to happen is people will eat the relaxation foods in the early part of the day, say lunchtime, and then they're very sluggish at work and they can't quite figure out why that is, and then they'll eat the more alertness foods at night and then they can't sleep. And in early recovery there is an adjustment process with the whole sleep cycle and everything, and they're trying to get on track with eating 3 meals a day. So a lot of times it's looking at what are you eating and when are you eating it. For example, foods that induce sleep, which also can be relaxation, which can be good if you have anxiety, are things like turkey and walnuts, almonds, chamomile tea. Those are the types of things you should think about having more towards the end of the day before you go to bed. The things that are energy foods are yogurt, avocados, oatmeal, fish, eggs, sweet potatoes. Those things should be more in the middle of the day. But people are often eating turkey sandwiches at lunch, and then they're feeling like they want to take a nap at work. So maybe flip that. Have the turkey at night, and have tuna fish or something like that in the middle of the day versus tuna fish at night, and then you can't kind of relax enough to go to bed. Have the chamomile tea at night with a turkey sandwich, and you probably have a much calmer segue into sleeping. So part of your recovery process with and substance abuse is to pay attention to what you're putting into your body and when you're putting it in, and eating healthier, and the timing of what you're eating. All has to come together in the recovery process.
Has a big impact. If we want to kind of encapsulate the 3 ways diet can impact our mental health, we can look at graphic 3, which shows that number 1, it's crucial, right? A healthy diet is crucial for brain development. This is a statement from Dr. Sukol, who is specialist at Cleveland Clinic's Wellness Institute, who says we are quite literally what we eat, right? When we eat real food that nourishes us, it becomes a protein building blocks, enzymes, brain tissue, and neurotransmitters that we need. Excuse me. 2, it puts the brain into growth mode. So a diet rich in nutrients like omega-3s and zinc boosts levels of really important brain chemicals. And a poor diet has a very negative impact on these brain proteins. And number 3, it fills the gut with healthy bacteria. When we think of bacteria, we often think of negative, but the good bacteria help fend off the germs and keep the immune system in check, keep it healthy.
And I think that's really an important point, because often in early recovery, you might be taking medications, and people they're skipping meals, they're not eating the proper thing, or they're not eating at all, and that affects the absorption of their medications, which in turn affects their mood and their well-being. Also, if you're recovering from an illness and you may be on an antibiotic, that taking the something like a yogurt for the good bacteria, because you need to offset what the antibiotics wiping out in your system. So it's very important what paying attention to what you're putting in your body and when you're putting it in your body. And the key is, I think, choosing food that give maximum nutrients but are not giving too many calories as well. Blueberries too. They're excellent
very
for
good.
memory and concentration,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they are very useful in warding off dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So even just a cup of blueberries on your cereal in the morning is really all you need to actually do something extremely proactive if you
Right.
do it on a daily basis or at least several times a week for staving off dementia
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah, yeah. The nutrients that might be especially helpful for treating or preventing mental illness, a short list, but B vitamins, right? People with low B12 levels have more brain inflammation and higher rates of depression and dementia. And talking about especially alcohol really depletes those
B
B's.
vitamins.
Iron, too little iron has been linked to depression. 3 omega-3s, they're the healthy fatty acids, right, that improve thinking and memory and mood. And then zinc, which helps control the body's stress responses, and low levels are connected to depression as well. And also fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, right? They provide that good bacteria that can help with anxiety, stress, and depression. Vitamin B12, zinc, selenium, and dark chocolate all have antioxidants which increase blood flow to the brain, which assist in mood improvement and memory improvement. Okay. There's also Dr. Ramsey's a psychiatrist who specializes in studying the link between mental health and nutrition. He has created something that's called the Brain Food Scale, and you can access this. It's written right there on the handout at drewramseymd.com/brain-food-quiz, and you can actually go on there, and it's we'll ask you the types of food that you're eating now, and kind of give you a quick analysis. So I think there's 14 questions in it. It's kind of interesting to do. So now moving on to graphic 4, we talk about some mood boosting foods. These are the things that, look at what you're eating now, and if you can add some of these things in, or a lot of these things in, it's a really good, healthy addition. Number 1, though not in any specific order, but number 1 on the list is salmon, which is an excellent source of omega-3s, right? Very, very highly inflammatory, right? Anti-inflammatory, and very good with working with depression, depressive mood. Also high in protein and vitamin B12, vitamin D, and all of these things too are linked, if lacking, to depression. Dark leafy greens, right, could be Swiss chard, spinach, all make a really good contribution to the brain and nervous system, because they have a lot of B vitamins and iron. Chia seeds, great source of omega-3 fatty acids, right, and protein, fiber, and calcium. Turkey, that you mentioned earlier, besides the boosting that neurotransmitter, the serotonin, lots of B vitamins, B6, B12, and zinc. And as we said earlier, a zinc deficiency is associated with mood disorders, such as anxiety and depression. Lentils, great source of folate, which is one of the B vitamins that helps develop the nervous system. Eggs, high in protein, vitamin D and B12. They have a lot of what's called choline, and which is a nutrient that supports the nervous system, improves mood, and helps produce neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine. Sardines. Lots of vitamin B12, omega-3s, selenium, protein, vitamin D, and choline again. Avocados, and I might be going through this list a little fast, but there's quite a few to add to this. They have a lot of vitamin B5, which helps in the production of neurotransmitters in the brain. Bell peppers, high in C, they've been proven to enhance mood and reduce stress. Fermented foods that we talked about, for example, yogurt, right? Sauerkraut, great source of probiotics, which affect gut health. I mean, when we talk about serotonin, which we know is kind of like the mood enhancer, 95% of our serotonin is produced in the gut. We often think of it always produced in the brain, but it's produced in the gut. So when that's off, that has quite a powerful effect. Almonds are high in magnesium, fiber, and vitamin E, which helps with that antioxidant effect that we talked about earlier with it helps combat free radical damage, improves memory and cognition. Dark chocolate, great for serotonin, iron, and magnesium. It helps you kind of relax. Also, it's been shown that high concentrations help with age-related decline, cognitive decline. Also can be very good in lowering blood pressure. Rule of thumb, the darker the chocolate, the more nutrients. Sunflower seeds, a lot of vitamin E, B6, and magnesium. Sweet potatoes, high in fiber, vitamin C, potassium, vitamin B5, niacin, B6, manganese, magnesium, copper, so many nutrients in those. And compared to a regular white potato, they offer a lot more vitamins and more antioxidants. One sweet potato gives us over double the daily value of vitamin A that we need. And just a quick fact, but worldwide, vitamin A deficiency is the leading cause of preventable blindness in children. An estimated 250,000 to 500,000 children become blind every year due to a lack of vitamin A. So there were a lot of health benefits from sweet potatoes. Just to run through them, they support digestive health, keep your heart healthy, help stabilize blood sugar, boost immune system, good for your eyes, eyesight, excellent fuel for the brain. They can help reduce stress and anxiety. They can boost fertility. They can help fight cancer. Up to 80% of the protein in sweet potatoes is a storage protein known as sporamin. And it's been studied for anti-cancer ability and found to be effective in several types of cancer. And they are anti-inflammatories. Also quickly going through what we call classified to its top 15 brain foods, avocados, beets. Beets contain nitrates that expand the blood vessels, so they're very good for high blood pressure. Also for energy and performance. Blueberries and other berries, bone broth, broccoli, celery, olive oil, and rosemary and other herbs like parsley, cilantro, and basil. Turmeric, walnuts, and other nuts. And we have to stop. That was a big list. But thank you for joining us today. We hope that you found some helpful information on our discussion about nutrients, especially nutrients that enhance mental health and mental health well-being. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, you can contact us at phoenixinfo.online, or you can call 508-623-3931, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, and thank you.